Next will be the presentation of one key insights from the UN report, Seizing the Moment of Opportunity. The speaker is Senior Researcher, Renewable Energy Institute, Caroline Jibner. Caroline. Good afternoon. I am Caroline of Renewable Energy Institute. I will introduce the report. It is a great honor for myself. The first point about this report that a large number of international organizations have worked together. It is interesting, easy to read, so whether it be Japanese or English, I really would like to encourage you to have a look. This year is exactly 10 years since the Paris Agreement, because we are in 2025. The report introduces results, outcomes, and achievements since the Paris Agreement. Please look at the graph on the right. The blue is the number of Renewable Energy Institute. A correction. The blue is the renewable energy, and black or gray is fossil. And this is the new additional renewable facilities per year. In 2015, the addition of renewable energy was 153 gigawatt, but in 2024 it increased up to 585 gigawatt, a huge expansion. In the same year, in 2024, the fossil fuel addition was only 43 gigawatt. And if you compare the renewable energy accounts for 92.5% of the new addition, which is a massive ratio. Compared to 10 years ago, it is rising significantly. Looking at the accumulative capacity in 2024, the ratio of the renewable energy and the fossil fuel has become almost equal, 1:1. As a result, the share of the power generated by renewable reached 32% across the world. And looking at the storage battery capacity, this has also increased significantly. In 2015, it was only 2 gigawatt. In 2024, it was 89 gigawatt, which is an increase of a staggering 4,350% increase. The report says that solar and wind power generations have become the fastest growing source of power in history. So this rapid growth is strongly related to the cost reduction. Since 2015, generation cost has gone down hugely. Please look at the right-hand side graph. The orange is the cost, and the blue is the installed capacity. Solar, onshore, and offshore wind are shown. The capacity is increasing, and the cost is going down rapidly, which is clearly demonstrated. The cost of solar went down by 68%. Wind cost went down by approximately 50%. Further, storage battery. Between 2010 through 2023, it was a cost reduction of a huge 93%, enormous reduction. Currently, 91% of new renewable facility is now significantly cheaper than newly constructed fossil fuel plants. And it's not only about the cost, but the time required for construction is entirely different. For solar or wind, you can construct within less than 3 years, but for coal, gas, thermal, you will spend more than 5 years. For nuclear power plant, you will spend more than 10 years. That is, renewable energy have become overwhelmingly fast and cheap to construct. And experts say that, particularly for photovoltaic, it is irreversibly entered a virtuous cycle of becoming cheaper and faster. That is what it is introduced in the report. So cost has gone down, deployment has expanded, and investment has also changed. Ms. Nemoto also mentioned about investment. In 2024, investment in clean energy was above $2 trillion, which is twice the amount of investment into fossil fuel. And these investments are supporting the economic growth of the world and employment. In 2023, only in the clean energy area, it accounted for 10% of the global GDP growth. In monetary values, it was approximately 320 billion US dollars. In terms of country, India accounted for 5%, US 6%, China 20%, the EU accounted for about one-third. Further, the employment in green energy in 2021, the employment went above the employment in fossil fuel for the first time. That is, the expansion of renewable is indeed serving as the engine for economic growth. I will now discuss the advantages of expanding renewable. First of all, energy security and sovereignty. 74% of the global population reside in countries that depend on imported fossil fuels. In this map, the red countries are those countries. In particular, there is a tendency that populous countries depend on import. When the Ukraine crisis started in 2022, household energy price across the world went up by 20%. As a result, the price volatility applied pressure onto the company's household and respective countries' public finance. I am a German person, and this was very conspicuous, made a headline in Germany as well. The lessons from this experience is that expansion of renewable is going to be the strongest insurance. Solar and wind, they are not impacted by the fuel cost rise nor the import restriction, which means that almost all the countries will be able to become energy independent. In a nutshell, renewable energy gives us power to bring back energy security and sovereignty. And the next advantage is affordability, which means that it is inexpensive. The renewable energy technology, once deployed, it can be used for a long time. But in the case of fossil fuels, you will have to buy repeatedly every year. For example, with the deployment of 1 gigawatt of solar panel, this is worth saving 30 years' worth of import cost of natural gas. Between 2000 and 2023, thanks to the renewable energy, the import cost of fossil fuels across the world was saved as much as 4,090 billion US dollars. In particular, in Asia, Europe, Latin America, there was a huge savings because of renewables. On the other hand, for countries depending on import of fossil fuels, the development of such countries were constrained by stubbornly high prices and volatility. One example is Seychelles. The import cost accounts for 18% of GDP, which means renewable energy have the power to make energy inexpensive and to stabilize the economy of nations. And the next advantage, energy access and resilience. First of all, about energy access. Even now, renewable energy deliver electricity to people who do not have connection to the grid. And with off-grid solar alone, 490 million people already have access to power. Increased access to energy is not only about electricity, it is a huge contribution to better quality of life, like poverty reduction, health, education, and women's empowerment. Please do refer to the report for the technical details. What is important here is fossil fuel or coal thermal power plant cannot be constructed in someone's backyard. However, in the case of solar panels, wherever it is, you can deliver solar panels. Solar and wind can be deployed quickly, cheaper, and flexibly than fossil fuel. Next, talking about resilience. Distributed and diverse renewable energy system is very useful even immediately after natural disasters or for long-term resilience against climate change. Furthermore, Even if it is renewable-centered system, high reliability can be maintained. Please look at the data. For example, in Denmark in 2023, variable renewable energy accounted for 68%, but the blackout in 1 year was only 30 minutes. In Germany, at renewable 44%, 13 minutes. In the United States, variable at 22% and more than 6 hours, 366 minutes, which means renewable is a development of human being, and energy access and resilience can be realized at the same time. And this is what I mentioned. In 2024, 93% of the new capacity was renewable. On the other hand, in terms of the generated power, fossil fuel accounts for 59%. What this number means is that in order to promote energy transition, not only deploying renewables, but we must accelerate the phase out of fossil fuel. There are still major barriers in order to expand renewables. First, there is geographical concentration in terms of investment. Please look at the graph. On the right-hand side, China, Europe, and Latin America. Many investment concentrate in those areas. On the left-hand side, that is Southeast Asia and African countries. Very different. No, I said the opposite in terms of right and left. On the right-hand side, a few investment in Africa and Southeast Asia, and this is about fossil fuel lock-in because today there are still a large number of coal, oil, and gas power generation projects are under development, and subsidies are huge for fossil fuel. And because of the rapid expansion of AI and data centers, the demand for power itself is continuing to rise. Currently, the power demand of data center accounts for 1.5% across the world. By 2030, it is expected to increase up to 945 terawatt-hour. This is equivalent to Japan's current annual power consumption. Unless this increasing demand is met by renewables, carbon locking will continue, and decarbonization will only become more difficult. And the next major barrier is the infrastructure bottleneck. Renewable energy projects waiting to be plugged into the grid is above 3,000 gigawatt. Investment in transmission grid and storage battery is lagging far behind compared to investment into generation equipment. It is a long-term lack or a deficiency. There are political lobby activities and disinformation and misinformation occur, causing further delay. For example, we still keep hearing that renewable is expensive. And this is my final slide. This report suggests 6 priority actions. One is policy coherence and clarity. Long-term signals must be sent out and presented. The second is, as I mentioned, investment in infrastructure. Number 3 is to meet new demand with renewable energies. Typically, AI and data, these demands must be met by renewables. Number 4, just transition. Number 5, strengthen cooperation on trade and investment. Diversifying supply chain is also important. Number 6, mobilize finance for developing countries. Energy transition is a challenge for the entire world. My last message is, in the last 10 years, renewable has advanced tremendously and has offered huge benefit to our society and economies. We are at a moment of historic opportunity. Let us not miss this moment and accelerate and pioneer the future together. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Next, presentation 2, Japan's challenges and opportunities in the energy transition. Dr. Yukari Takamura, Professor, Institute for Future Initiatives, the University of Tokyo. Professor Takamura, you have the floor. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for the kind introduction. I am Takamura. Thank you for inviting me for this symposium. My role in this symposium, as I understand, is based on the report that was made by Carolyn, and there will be a deep dive into the topic during the panel discussion. So I am here to give you the context of where we are in Japan. What we've achieved in adopting renewables, as you know, in FY23, renewables accounts for close to 23% in the energy mix, excluding large hydro, it's 15.3%. Before the Great East Japan earthquake, and if you compare to FY 2010, including large hydro, it has increased by 2 times, or excluding large hydro, it has increased by 7-fold, or more than 7-fold. In order to further grow renewables from an energy policy perspective and for climate change policy perspective, this is clearly stipulated by the Japanese government, 2050 achieving carbon neutrality and corresponding 2035 target and 2040 targets have been submitted to the United Nations. Sorry, I'm on the wrong slide. But in the seventh basic energy plan, compared to where we are today, 40 to 50% of energy mix will be covered by renewables. This is the direction presented by the government, but the scale, 2030 target, it's a must to achieve a target, and it is stipulated in the policy. But compared to where we are, 1.5 times of renewable power generation. It has to increase by 1.5 times. And to achieve the 2040 target, this is based on model calculation. From 2030 levels, the renewable power generation will have to increase by another 1.5 times. In terms of the backdrop of these targets, and it is actually presented in the report that was covered by Carolyn. In Japan, there's this vulnerability of the energy system in Japan. Especially, it was highlighted by the attack of Russia on Ukraine in 2022. And if you look at the self-sufficiency rate, on a primary energy basis, 90% dependency on import, and for power, 70% of our electricity is dependent on fossil fuel imports. And this is also seen in trade balance. Of course, a part of it is affected by foreign exchange, but auto or electrical equipment, industries and sectors, the money that is made, earned in those sectors at 1.9 trillion, 2.6 trillion of that is actually paid to import fossil fuel. In the meantime, there is a heightened need for renewable demand from businesses. And I understand that many of you in the audience are from Japanese companies. Sustainability disclosures or Scope 3 reductions are being called for by stakeholders. And whether renewables can be adopted or introduced is actually very important and very much relevant in the context of reducing emissions. And this is according to a newspaper questionnaire done by Nikkei, and results show that 30% of 100 CEOs who took the questionnaire said that they are in favor of introducing renewables or expanding renewables. Now, introducing and expanding renewables is actually an energy policy and also climate change and also an industrial policy, very relevant. Competitiveness of Japanese companies and also for companies to choose Japan as a location for business. It's very important in terms of how Japan is being evaluated from that perspective. Now let us take a look where we currently are. The needs for procurement of renewables is very high amongst businesses, as I said, but there is a decline in the certified capacity under the FIT or 5P scheme. On the right-hand side is the certified amount. It's been shifting around 1 giga or 1.5 gigawatt for the past few years. Offshore wind, I think you are very familiar, but when it comes to onshore wind, 10 gigawatts that has been certified are not up in operation. And this is one of the challenges that was mentioned in the report that was mentioned earlier. So there is a call to increase renewables, and we are calling for that under the Japanese policy. But if you look at the reality, solar and wind, which were expected to grow, but in reality, we are seeing a decrease in investment into solar and wind. In the past 2 years, there is less increase in out of scheme non-FIT related introduction, but we need to seize this opportunity. How to address this challenge is extremely critical. While installations outside the scheme, FIT scheme, are gradually increasing. And also a coexistence with local communities is a very important societal challenge. Another point I would like to emphasize on this occasion is, again, the report was written in international context, but what is the value and benefit of introducing and adopting renewables for us in Japan? Of course, this is important from a climate change perspective, but relatively speaking, fossil fuel prices have soared and are staying at a high price. The fact that we will be able to reduce energy prices for households and for SMEs, this is extremely critical. Furthermore, I think eventually we will be hearing from Tokyo Metropolitan Government, who will be taking part in the panel discussion, Ms. Miura, and we also heard from the governor of Tokyo earlier. But from the perspective of enhancing resilience at times of disasters, in a situation where there is a blackout, we will be able to secure a certain level of power with the adoption of renewables, which should be very important for households and also for businesses. And it's also important for businesses, as I mentioned earlier, because it will enhance their corporate value by promoting decarbonization, and it's also relevant in order to enhance the self-sufficiency of energy. And also important from a national security perspective. But there is a discussion that solar power is about outflow of national wealth. We often hear this, and I think we need to be very careful. It's included in my slide deck. According to IEA, in their 2024 report, it was mentioned symbolically. A single journey by one large container ship of solar PV modules can provide the means to generate as much electricity as the gas for 50 large LNG tankers or coal for 100 large ships. So I explained earlier how much Japan is paying for fossil fuel, and therefore I think we need to take a very good look at the discussion on the outflow of national wealth. And this summer was extremely hot, scorching hot. and the supply of electricity did not face any problems. And thanks to our all collective effort, we were able to overcome the heat. But the supply, especially during the daytime when it is hot and high demand in air conditioning, where demand is high, large part of the supply is being covered by renewables, solar. And the value of introducing renewables, I think, has to be re-understood. So how to overcome the challenges? The report appropriately describes how we can over the challenges, but I would like to give some context for Japan. I believe that we need to take two approaches in terms of timeline. One is for Japan, for the residents in Japan, and for the businesses and communities in Japan. What is beneficial for us must be implemented now without taking time. But from that perspective, renewable energy that is led by residents and local communities and benefits of the local community is very important. And what I want to emphasize here is that it's not about renewable energy or natural conservation. Nature is very important, and climate change countermeasures is also important. One of the reasons for deterioration of nature is climate change. So it's not a question of either or. It's more about how to strike a balance between renewable energy and nature conservation, increasing renewable energy and also maintain the nature, conserve nature. What kind of community do the residents want to create? That should be the starting point. And if there are no experts in the community and there are concerns about money and about technology and capabilities, how we can support one another and collaborate to move forward, I believe that is the perspective that we need to take. And the second approach is to take a more longer-term perspective to make sure we have the right institutional framework in place. And I believe Professor Takahashi will elaborate on this during the panel discussion, so I won't go into detail. So the first point which I mentioned, which is the residents and local communities taking the leadership in introducing renewables, necessary things should be implemented immediately. Of course, some support is necessary. It's not that every operator is capable of investing immediately, but environmental-friendly renewables should be introduced in a disciplined manner. And at the same time, there are many different benefits that renewables will bring. How to realize that, I think, it should be visualized and widely understood. And there are three things that I want to emphasize. One is to introduce renewables that are integral with buildings. Tokyo Metropolitan Government is ahead of the curve, but the national government is also putting a lot of emphasis. You might be familiar with this from the 1st of October. For a certain period of time, a certain premium will be paid for rooftop solar, and rooftop solar, how much could be put in place and what is the output. Reporting obligation will start from next fiscal year. So this mechanism, which is a scheme that is integral with buildings, is about. This is my top priority initiative because of my high blood pressure. But there is scientific evidence showing that net zero energy houses will reduce stroke. People who die of stroke by 10,000, and also prevents and lowers morning systolic blood pressure. So there is health benefit that these buildings and houses will bring. Another is introducing renewables to activate farming. Solar power that will support agriculture is also being promoted. The number of people working in agriculture has been halved in the past 10 years or so, and this is data from MAF. Income of farmers. Looking at the income of farmers, on average, 4 million, and paddy farming farmers have seen a reduction of 2.7 million. In 6 years, a field survey was conducted by a professor of University of Tokyo, and as a result of introducing solar power across farms, about 20% of yield has reduced, but income was increased by 5 times. So aging of farmers is a major challenge, and how to support agriculture, which is supporting our food, is a part of the initiative that is being implemented as part of renewable energy. Another favorite topic for me. And Professor Takahashi is going to cover this, so I said I won't elaborate on this. But renewable energy cost has been reduced, but for the cost differential with thermal power is still very small, and that's where there is an inferiority in Japan. So the value of carbon emissions must be reflected in the market. That is the kind of market we must build. And in the short term, as mentioned, carbon pricing, we need to give good thoughts to building the carbon pricing scheme. And I'm sure there will be in-depth discussions in the panel discussion. That is all for me. Thank you very much for your kind attention.